Hey, everybody, welcome to Hearing God in First Timothy 4. And my verse for today, my highlight is verse 7, where the Apostle Paul writes to his young protege Timothy, and he says, "Have nothing to do with irreverent, silly myths, rather train yourself for godliness." And in context, Paul is warning Timothy to avoid the false doctrines of the false teachers who had infiltrated the church there at Ephesus. And reading between the lines, it would seem that one of these doctrines had to do with a certain emphasis on an extreme physical asceticism where certain foods were prohibited that should have been viewed as gifts from God. And Paul saying, hey, that's goes beyond scripture. That is not what this is all about. And so Paul calls such ideas irreverent, silly myths. And while it is true that for us, that may not be something that we struggle with, an extreme physical asceticism that prohibits certain foods, actually, I need to be more disciplined in what I eat, and maybe I'm not alone in that. But in our current setting, I think it could be said that we are, in fact, in our flesh, drawn to certain irreverent, silly myths. And these are largely propagated by social media. Through our scrolling, we see all kinds of crazy things that we're drawn to, and it instigates a certain level of excitement and drama in us. Also, cable news. I believe it's absolutely important for us as believers to be informed, but there is a line between information and entertainment. And a lot of the news that we watch crosses that line, and it's no longer simply about informing us, but it's entertaining us. And when it becomes about entertainment, it is true that the more salacious, the more provocative it can be, the more ratings go up, because again, there's something in our flesh that we're drawn to that. And especially if it coincides with what we believe, it gets us all fired up about that particular perspective. We love a good fight. We love a good controversy, and so we're drawn to these things that get us stirred up. But to what end? I would ask. Does this make us more like Jesus, or does it make us more like the world? It's sad sometimes when I see interactions of people I know who profess to be believers on social media, and it doesn't come across any different than the world. Does our attraction to these irreverent myths and those things which are silly in a lot of respects, does that bring peace to our souls, or does it bring agitation? Well, Paul says that the remedy for this is to change our focus and rather immerse ourselves in the drama, rather than immerse ourselves in the controversies and the irreverent myths. We are to focus on training ourselves to be like him, training ourselves for righteousness. And that word training, I think, is important because you don't train by accident. Training doesn't happen passively. Training is very intentional. And so, while I think it's possible that we fall into passively a lot of these patterns of our flesh being attracted to the controversy and the fights and all the stuff that gets us stirred up, we have to very proactively, intentionally seek to involve ourselves in those activities which train ourselves for godliness and for righteousness. So there's going to need to be an intentional decision made to pull away from one and to seek the other. But the good news is that when we make that switch, when we make that change, man, the outcome is the production of the fruit of the Spirit in our lives: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, self-control. All those things that we desire and we want more of. This is how it happens when we choose to change our focus and we abide in the vine, Jesus Christ. And so, in my R or response, somebody said, "Father, may I desire the feeding of my soul more than the tickling of my ears." May I focus on Philippians 4:8, which says, "Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things." And I really think that that's what Paul was speaking to Timothy and the church at Ephesus, and that's what Paul would speak to us as well. And so I would invite you to join me on that journey of change and focus. I, just like anybody else, can fall into the controversy and the traps of that which is provocative and gets me stirred up and fired up in a lot of areas that, you know what, at the end of the day, boy, I'd be so much better off if I change my focus and train myself for righteousness and godliness and focused my attention, meditated on those things which are from above rather than from the earth below. So hopefully that challenges you and blesses you today. Thank you so much for joining me on Hearing God in 1 Timothy 4.